So it was really disappointing to see it. For me, I disagreed with that tact.
JD Vance has had one hell of a week getting roasted all over the internet, as his remarkably baby-like face is getting memed into oblivion. So much so that the real history books may say this was the real JD Vance all along. But maybe the most brutal roast came from this man, JD Vance's own cousin, who says that the way that JD treated Zelensky was disappointing. When your own family is going on national television to tell you that you're doing a bad job, maybe you're doing a bad job. If you're enjoying the video, make sure to like the video and double check that you're subscribed.
When your cousin's sitting on the couch and Zelensky is next to Trump sitting in those chairs, let me just play it.
I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
JD Vance was seen as widely seen as the instigator, in that moment, right? When he got it, you should show appreciation, and he was angry.
Yeah.
You obviously have known him his whole life. Did it surprise you, the way he acted in that moment?
I was surprised. I think what surprised me the most was, regardless of the situation, there's a certain level of decorum that should be reached. And, I'm not naive enough to think that, national leaders don't debate behind closed doors. But when you do that and you publicly, kind of ridicule someone in public, that they have to almost defend themselves. So it was really disappointing to see it for me. I disagreed with that tact.
Now,
there's a much more diplomatic way to say, wait, I think we're getting off on the wrong foot here. Maybe we can kind of, readdress what our positions are and things like that. There's much better ways to handle that.
I know.
Oof. A member of JD Vance's family hasn't been this disappointed in him since they walked in on him with that couch. Generally, guys who look like this vote Republican. But if the ex-veteran who's also your blood is coming on CNN to tell everyone he's disappointed with the way you treated Zelensky, well then I think it's time for JD Vance to take a good long look at those Christian values he likes to pretend to live by. Nate, JD's cousin here, is giving this interview to CNN because he fought on the front lines in Ukraine, and he's seen firsthand what the Russians are capable of doing and how hard the Ukrainians are fighting. So naturally, when his own flesh and blood started to align himself with Vladimir Putin, he tried to reach out and tell him about the truths that he saw. But of course, unless you're a Groyper, Nazi, or anti-Indian bigot, JD Vance isn't going to give you the time of day.
I know that you've tried to reach out to your cousin since he took office, but haven't been successful. What were you planning to say to him? What do you want to say to him now in this moment?
Well, look, there's more than one reason why you could make the argument for supporting Ukraine. There's the, kind of emotional argument, the human element argument part of it, which, fine, if that's the argument you want to make in order to support Ukraine, then I support that. There's also the element of how it will affect the United States long term, right? So if you're just more transactional in nature and you are concerned, what is the benefit for the United States? I don't think there's any scenario where if this war pauses and sanctions are lifted, Russia has spent the last 3 years kind of beefing up their military-industrial complex, and if you lift those sanctions, you're going to see a massive influx of funds into that military-industrial complex, and they're going to build a war machine out of it, right? That's what they're going to do. And the concept of an imperialistic, aggressive, modernized military Russia who has learned their lessons about modern combat is problematic for our future. And if the Russians are given significant concessions in this ceasefire, they will spin that as a victory of sorts. But their view is they're not done. So to them, it's just a chance to regroup, build up and modernize, and they'll come back. And when they do come back, they'll be more of a problem than they are now. Right now, they're at the weakest they will ever be. As soon as the ceasefire starts, they will immediately start to get stronger and continue to get stronger every day thereafter. So the way this ends is important.
Now, while I think the emotional humanitarian argument should be enough, it's also clear why the national security argument might go a little bit further in today's day and age, seeing as empathy is cringe now. But he makes a good point. For 3 years, Russia has not been able to take over a much smaller country. Russia has had to entirely restructure its economy in order to support this war, which is a point that he gets on. This sort of military-industrial complex is difficult to reverse, so if sanctions suddenly lift and trading starts happening with Russia again, well, all of that economic prosperity would go right back into that military-industrial complex. More weapons, more ships, more planes, essentially restocking, in order to come back and take what's left of Ukraine. Because it should be clear to anyone with senses that Putin is trying to reclaim the territory lost at the fall of the USSR. It's about glory and power for Putin. He doesn't care how many millions of people have to die, whether they're Russian or Ukrainian. And Nate Vance here has seen that brutality firsthand.
I think if you try to deal with Russia through an American lens, it will come back to bite you. They don't necessarily think like we think, and I'm talking about their political class. I've personally witnessed them shooting their own troops on enough occasions that it wasn't just an isolated incident. It's happened quite a bit, enough to the point where you could consider it to be policy if troops are retreating. So these people, as a policy, will eat their own. So they will not hesitate to eat an American president or American vice president. They don't care what we think. They're not our allies, and they never will be, not at least for a generation.
He's 100% correct. Have you seen Russian state media recently? They're spending half their time glazing up Trump and the other half dreaming about how they're going to attack the US. Everybody in the world, from Europe to Russia to China to JD Vance's cousin, can see that the Trump administration is falling directly in line with Putin's plan. So well, it's almost as if they're colluding.
One of America's #1 exports is security, right? And in order to provide security for people, right, that's how we get business deals. Is, we'll look after you, we'll watch your back, but we get, we get a good trade deal out of this somehow, right? That's kind of how it works. Another way to look at it is like protection money, which sounds a little more nefarious, but
reminds me of old school Boston Irish mob.
Yeah. But so part of the ability to provide people security and make them actually trust you is you have to keep your word, right? So whether it was Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or whoever was in the White House, when they said, "We got your back," that's not Joe Biden saying, "We got your back." That's America saying it. And people that didn't vote for Joe Biden might not like it, but he got elected and was the representative of the United States, right? That's how it works. So if you crawfish on people, you start to lose your status. The next time you are like, "Hey, we kind of have an interest in this region of the world, and we want to be here," and then that country's going, "Well, I know when you get tired of it, you're just going to say fuck you and leave me here, and then I'm going to get killed."
Look
right?
what you did to Ukraine. Why
Exactly.
don't you do it to us?